Communication is so crucial, and how we communicate, the tone of voice, when, where, and if the other person is open to receiving as well. I'm super excited for us to dive into that. In your work, do you ever involve the love languages when it comes to speaking with couples or even in your own work? Hello and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. I'm Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be inspired to live your life fully, to take ownership of your time, your schedule, and your life, but most importantly, learn and grow and develop personally and professionally. Myself and others are going to share life lessons that we've learned through leadership, through heartache, through pain, through struggles, and we'll be sharing some success stories with you as well. Super eager for you to dive in, learn, and grow. And once again, just take ownership of your life today. Hello, and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. I'm Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be inspired to live your life fully, to take ownership of your time, your schedule, and your life, but most importantly, learn and grow and develop personally and professionally. Myself and others are going to share life lessons that we've learned through leadership, through heartache, through pain, through struggles, and we'll be sharing some success stories with you as well. Super eager for you to dive in, learn, and grow, and once again, just take ownership of your life today. I am so excited about this podcast. I have Dave and Linda, and ironically enough, my husband's name is David, and my mother-in-law's name is Linda. So this will be super fun. And we are going to be talking a lot about marriage. So if you are married, or if you're not married, you're still going to want to tune in. You're going to want to listen. And I'm sure at the end of this podcast, you're going to be sending this to 5, if not 10 of your friends, because you are going to learn so much from our conversation today. We are going to inspire you to look within. We're going to inspire you to take the obstacles and turn them into opportunities and look within and have fun in the bedroom too. We're going to be talking about that. We're super excited to get intimate. And my guests here, they are certified communication coaches. They also do ministry work. They work with leaders. They work with counseling. And they have been married for over 57 years. So they have a lot of value to share with us today. Linda and Dave, thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We checked out your show, and your heart and our heart are so similar, wanting to help people avoid some of the potholes that we ended up in our lives. So we just are grateful to be here.
Well, I'm super grateful for you as well. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. I know that it can be challenging to share the struggles that we face in marriage and reliving those. They could be triggers, they could be, not so pleasant at some times. But I think it's important for us to be the voice for those that haven't, been able to express themselves because of fear of judgment, because of shame, or other variables or feelings and emotions. So thanks for sharing your story with me today. Before we kick it off, I would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about you. Where do you live? Do you have children? Where are you traveling to? All those great things that we can connect with you, and definitely sprinkle a little bit about your ministry work.
Okay, well, we live in southeastern Ohio. Um, we've been married 57 years, as you said. We have 2 children, and they're middle age, and we have 3 grandchildren, and a great grandchild on the way.
Yeah,
So
that's exciting. Our kids are some of our best friends, but we actually went through some very rough times as we were raising our kids, and so it wasn't always so, but that was what inspired us to learn the things that we needed to know to stay connected. And I love what you said at the beginning. This is about marriage. That's our main ministry, our main area of coaching. But so many of these skills are so appropriate for individuals, for singles, and even for for younger children up to adult children. So the skills are almost universally applied, with a few that apply only to marriage.
we've been through some Egypt experiences where we wandered in the desert for a while, and of course we've been to the Promised Land a couple times. But it's in and out, back and forth, and for the most part, our marriage has been steadily upward. we got involved in a drug treatment program with our son in the early '80s, and we learned a lot about ourselves. It was a family program. We learned a lot about ourselves and why we were there, and we learned to communicate. We had not been good communicators, even though we thought things were going really well. And so we learned those principles there, and our marriage really improved a lot. It
I would,
changed us.
yeah, I would say before we knew that we needed help, we could have been the poster children for dysfunctional families. But on the side, we're still looking for the first functional family. If you are out there, please let us know. But I'm telling you, we had a lot of dysfunction and a lot of love in our family. It's just that it was hard to feel that love because we did not know how to be intimate, how to be a safe place for our children and for each other. So that program, I guess when we started, I would say I felt like a failure. And by the time we finished a year and a half later, I realized we had been given what we had always needed. And so we could bring this blessing not only to our own family, but we can share it with other people. So I was a registered nurse. Dave worked at Ford Motor Company for 31 years. And when we were 52 and 54, we realized we did love our careers, but more than that, we loved helping people, sharing what we had been given, what we had been blessed with. So we retired to do the thing that, and we're still quote unquote live a full, busy life. We've traveled around the world in our ministry. We still minister often to individuals, to couples, or we might go to a church and do a marriage weekend. Um, we love our life and we don't have any plans to really retire.
And we really love to reproduce the principles that we've learned.
Love to train. Yeah, train other people to do what we're doing.
Well, I love it. I'm so excited for you to share all this great knowledge with all of us. And I love the fact of the communication. Like, I really think that there should be a communication class, whether it's grade school, middle school, or high school, or even in college when you're dealing with the business world. Communication is so crucial, and how we communicate, the tone of voice, when, where, and if the other person is open to receiving as well. So, I'm super excited for us to dive into that. In your work, do you ever involve the love languages when it comes to speaking with couples or even in your own work?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we've learned the love language profiles, and we find that that really up to your communication level, just learning what your spouse's um, needs are, and how to keep her love bucket full. Speak her language.
Yeah.
And my for Linda and I, her first language is my very last, and so it's naturally the last place I go to communicate. I like to talk about thoughts, but when it comes to feelings, I really have to search myself. And so as a result, I went to the computer and found some words that match her language, and I have a list on my dresser.
And I love that list because every day he reminds himself how to speak my language. And it's nice for me because Dave's top language, which is quality time, is my second language. So I easily speak his language. And when I saw that my first language, which is words of affirmation, was his last language, I became much more compassionate about how difficult it is for him to remember to speak my language and how easy it is for me to speak his. Although I have to say he does a top notch job, and that little list he keeps on his dresser is a big help. One thing unique about love languages and the way we approach it is we find that when we keep each other's love tank full, we have less conflict because we just have that satisfaction, that feeling of acceptance and respect. And so it's wonderful. But we all have hard times. And when we are going through challenging times, we may remember less often to speak those love languages. And we try not to use that as an excuse, like, well, of course I'm grumpy. You haven't filled my love tank. We try not to do that, because I actually can get my own love tank filled by being kind to myself, speaking those positive, encouraging words to myself, and reminding myself that I am a compassionate person. And when Dave is down, rather than blaming him for not being at his best, I want to come alongside and encourage him and speak his love language. So uh, we look at that love tank a little bit differently. But we went to that Love Nudge app and took that profile in, I mean, maybe 5 minutes. And we have gotten so much benefit from it. So we really encourage people in that.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you understand their love language and what it means. So I use this example frequently that my husband's love language was quality time. And I'm working on my feminine energy, and I was very, very masculine. So when I was like, quality time, we're in the same house, we're on the same couch, we're at the same event together, like we're going to all these places together. And that's what I thought quality time was just being in the same room. But my husband wanted it to be intimate conversations, me to be focused on him, me to be talking to him, listening. Like that was really quality time for him. So understanding the differences of those love languages too has been super, super impactful. I love the love tank idea. I love the list that you're talking about. I'm going to encourage my husband to make a list as well, because my love language is words of affirmations as well. And that may be because of my upbringing, or it could be because I'm constantly doing so many things. And when you're an owner of a company, no one really tells you you're doing a good job.
Right.
Like no one really says, hey, that was a really smart idea. I mean, everyone just expects you, the owner of the company, to come up with all the ideas, and they got to be the best ones, right?
Mhm.
So I think like leaning into that too, and understanding what your spouse or partner is doing can really help with those love languages too. So thank you for sharing all that beautiful story. I'm so happy to have the both of you here with me today. I just want to jump in the car with you.
Oh, come on along. We'd love to. Hey, maybe we will meet you in person one day. That would be so much
So,
fun.
yeah.
Well, I live in Sarasota, Florida, so come to Sarasota. And really quickly, since you're from Ohio, I'm going to ask you or tell you an Ohio joke because it has to do with marriage. Do you know what's between Dayton and Marion?
No. Oh.
Engagement.
Right.
Oh, that's
That's good. I
cute.
like it.
We'll have to remember that one.
It's such a cheesy joke, I know. So, okay, cool. All right, so let's get into talking about the importance of. Do you want to talk about the yourself chapter and how it's important to really love yourself and lean into yourself and get to know yourself first? Or do you want to talk about the benefits of spouse in talking about unresolved conflict?
I vote for spouse and unresolved
That's
conflict.
fine.
Let's do it. So I'm gonna have you just kind of lean into that conversation and tell us what you mean about that and what your advice would be.
Want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as we started in marriage ministry, we ministered to quite a few couples before we ministered to a couple where there had been an affair, infidelity, and that marriage was almost destroyed by it. But they did choose to work on it and to come back. But what I'm saying is that we worked with so many people in which their marriages were struggling. But if you looked at them, you really couldn't pick out any major issue. And they would say things like, well, we just fell out of love, or we're incompatible, or we have irreconcilable differences. We just cannot see eye to eye. And and then we would say things like, well, when you met each other, what attracted you to each other? All of a sudden, these sour looking people would start to smile and say, well, he was just the most handsome guy I ever met, and he was so friendly. Or or he would say, she just made me feel at ease, or I loved watching how she interacted with people. All of a sudden, these people that came through that door so angry were smiling, and they were remembering that they loved each other. And so, as we worked with them over the years, what we found was that between them was this great big wall, and they would have no idea how it got there. But as we began to teach them basic skills, we realized they had no conflict resolution skills. They would just quote unquote argue until somebody won, or until they just push it down and say, we can't fix it, we'll just go on.
What we would do is we'd get to a position early on in the ministry, and we would say, would you like to forgive each other for that? Whatever we would key off that point, and from that point on, it would change the direction. They'd sit face to face, repent to one another for something that they could think of, and they began to think differently.
And we explained to them that there are many levels of forgiveness, but Dave's so right. When they have their breakthrough, it always begins with forgiveness. And we explain how these unresolved conflicts have been built up between them, how they've laid bricks in this big, heavy wall, but those bricks can be disassembled. That wall can be taken down, but it begins with forgiveness. And we explain, because there are many levels of forgiveness, the very first level, you have to be sure they realize you are not saying what you did is okay. It's not okay. What you're saying is, I forgive you. In other words, I am so tired of carrying this. I'm going to release that to you. It's actually your responsibility. And if they have a relationship with God, we would say it's really between you and God. I'm taking myself out of that picture. I'm not the one that has to make this right. And that usually the tears start flowing. They start forgiving as best they can, whatever level. And that is enough to give them some grace, or that desire and ability to start moving forward. It's so interesting. When we started working with couples, they were just engaged couples. They would bend over backwards. They were so concerned about having a good marriage. They would do anything we asked, all their homework, everything. Then when we started working with married couples, we were quite concerned that could we really help them when they were so upset? And we actually prayed about it. And what we felt was we should take the book we wrote for engaged couples and use it for married couples, because the problem is always in the foundation. It seemed too simple. How could we give them these simple skills and see their marriage healed? But we did it, and it works. It really works. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of marriages reestablished and healed.
When we were in the drug treatment program with our son, he had to earn the right to speak.
It was
So
a privilege to
the
speak to his
privilege to speak
parents.
to us as a family, and we would get 5 minutes together, and we would sit and forgive. We'd spend the time forgiving one another, and that rebuilt the wall of communication between us. It developed a trust between us, and it began to restore the relationship. The power of forgiveness.
So when we're talking about the power of forgiveness, and there's just so many things that I want to break down with the both of you, but I'll start with forgiveness because that's the most recent thing that we were talking about. I know when I was trying to find forgiveness for my husband for what he did, I had so much hate and so much anger to myself because I blamed myself for a lot of things. Or it was like, I knew better. I knew it was happening, but I didn't fight for my marriage. Or I was just so sick of fighting. I didn't want to fight anymore. And then I was really, really mad at myself. And then there was a lot of things that I went down that thing. But prior to forgiving my husband for his actions, I had to forgive myself. So, do you want to lean into that, or is that something that you come across too with like the actions and the unresolved conflicts and certain things like that, when where you can forgive somebody else, really forgiving yourself?
Yeah, well, forgiveness is not healing. It's just a decision, a choice that we make. And so it doesn't mean that we give up the right to see that person suffer consequences. It doesn't mean that we don't say it was okay, or that we stay in relationships with someone who hurts us, but it means that we forgive, we release them. And we have to go through a healing process too. Our heart is hurt by what has happened. And there's been betrayal, mistrust. Trust is broken. So before we can think about restoring trust, we have to think about being healed.
That's a very good point, honey. And it is so true that a lot of the hurt can be toward the other person, but also toward ourselves, where we find people feel ashamed, they blame themselves, and they often question themselves, where they may have been a very confident person. They can just feel like everything is shaken. They never expected something like that to happen. And there is a level of self-blame, self-criticism, just what you said, all those thoughts that are so painful. So that is sometimes the first step in the process, is giving them an opportunity for their heart to be healed and for their mind to be healed, because they're thinking these thoughts that are so painful and so destructive, and they can't really move forward until they begin to have thoughts that are rational and helpful. And you know, too, there's sometimes when we have self-blame, it's not that we're 100% correct, or like he was all wrong, I was all right. We're not saying that. We've all made mistakes, and eventually we have to forgive ourselves. And at the same time, we have to be able to say, like I would say, in that drug rehab with our son, I felt like I had given him my very best, but my very best did not include how to be a safe place for him. I had to ask him forgiveness for that. You know, I couldn't blame everything on him, even though his behavior started to help us realize the pain in our family. I was a part of the picture too, but I could finally look at myself that way and not feel ashamed. It's like, hey, I need help. I'm so grateful to have it. I'm so blessed. So
So one of the things we'll talk about is what we call righteous anger. And when something happens that it shouldn't have happened, there should have been a protection. A child is hurt. Uh, Something very severe happens, and we think, why wasn't this in place? So we want to have justice. We want to see righteousness restored. Okay, and when we have that same thing about ourselves, we forgive ourselves, but it just keeps coming back. And we have what we call righteous anger against ourselves. I should have seen this coming. I should have known better. I never should have said those things. And it's a myriad of things that we carry against ourselves. It's heavy, it's a burden. Okay. And as long as we think that way or feel that way, we're not going to forgive that person. We're not going to forgive ourselves. And so the resolution of righteous anger is, Lord, I give you this righteous anger.
put it all in God's hands. Just let it go.
He was angry too when that happened. That made him angry as well. Okay. And so, hey, we say, you got it. I release it to you. And I can
And
forgive that other person with no
and
strings attached.
and I think at times we know that's what we need to do and we want to do it, but we can't, or we're stuck, or we're like, I'm not ready to like release it yet, or I'm not ready to get over it yet, or like. So what has been your challenges, or what has been your experience with individuals that maybe just aren't ready to release it because they're just still wanting to hang on to it for whatever reasons?
It's so true. We present the truth, and if they resist because they're just not there yet, we'll say that's okay. You'll know when you're ready. And you know what? They almost always come back the next day and say, okay, I'm done. I'm ready. And we find if we let it go and just let it be up to them, most people do want to let go of the pain. And the first step in that is forgiveness. So we let them dictate the time.
So, like with broken covenant, um, there's righteous anger. That never should have happened. All right.
Mhm.
But so there's healing needed, forgiveness and healing, and then to restore covenant. That's really tricky. So how do you do that? Do you just keep coming in with a new idea every day? The person who's offended comes with a new idea every day. No,
They
it doesn't work.
grovel, they work harder, they
Yeah.
try harder, they do everything they can to be a perfect spouse. It doesn't work.
So the only thing that really works is for the offended person to say, here's what you have to do to restore trust.
Because the one who's hurt knows what they need.
And
They
so they say,
know
every day I want you to come home from work and tell me I've been faithful to you and faithful to the Lord.
if it's true.
Yeah. And if they haven't, they need to say, I really struggled today.
So
Okay.
being
That
honest.
That requires someone to be
Um,
so brave and so honest and so vulnerable. And sometimes if they would just be honest from the very beginning,
Yes.
like, and be honest with the feelings, maybe it wouldn't have got there, but so many people are afraid to hurt the other person's feelings, or they don't know how to communicate it, or they're just spiraling as well. There's so many variables when it
yeah.
comes to having those conversations.
Jenny, that is so true. It takes a lot of courage, and that's why in our marriage we have to restore communication, because if we have the right tools, it still takes courage, but we know how to do it in a healthy way.
Mhm.
And we walk through it with them. They often do that in our presence, where we can coach them and make sure they are a safe place for each other. Just like we needed help when we went through that program with our son, the people who come to us are saying, we've tried on our own, we can't do it. So we want to be with them and help them through those very difficult times. And the repentance and forgiveness it's difficult at first, and then after a while it becomes a lifestyle of asking forgiveness for, I used to have bad attitudes. Well, actually I still have some bad attitudes, even though I've gotten rid of hundreds of them. I find I have more, and I used to think I could somehow pretend like everything was fine and it'll blow over. And then at one point I realized, no, Dave knows when I have a bad attitude, so I have to go and ask his forgiveness. And he's always so kind about it. He never says, well, I knew it all along. He just says, oh, sure, I forgive you. But we think we can slip these things in, and they actually hurt our spouse. So asking forgiveness from the smallest to the biggest thing is one of the greatest skills that we can have, not only in marriage, but in all our relationships.
So people can have good intentions, but unless they have tools of change, they're just going to repeat the same thing over again.
Mhm. So true.
Right. So when you're talking about the support and talking to other people and having the sense of community and asking for help or asking for guidance, I know that sometimes it can be challenging for people to open up and
Mhm.
share that. So how would you encourage, or what would you say to someone that maybe is listening to this today and they're really struggling about being honest with themselves, but being honest with other people and kind of sharing their story, whether no matter what end of conflict that they're on, how do you get them to open up and start talking? Are you looking to enhance your relationship with yourself? If so, get the Stroke It Guide. My book is available on Amazon and on my website. Not only is my book going to help you with your personal journey with yourself, but it's also going to help you with the relationships of other stakeholders in your life. For instance, your spouse or partner, your employer, your employees, your friends, or your family members. And of course, because the title, there is a chapter for your pleasure, which is the last one, in the bedroom. The book offers lots of great tools and resources. There's a lot of great downloads, and it features many of my podcast guests, and they have thousands of downloads and resources that are worth a lot of money. So you're going to want to get my book today. You can buy that on Amazon or on my website, and you can change and take ownership of your life today with one simple click.
Well, you have to have a trust. You have to establish some level of trust, whether we talk about our own experiences or the things that we've gone through
That's a
and
good
how we
point.
dealt with those problems, and we relate to them. Look, we've been through those same things. See our feet, see those scars there. We've been walking that glass with you,
Yeah.
And once we feel like we do that, uh, then we can begin to open some dialogue in that direction.
We had a couple that came for ministry last week, and we began the week by getting to know each other a little bit. But it wasn't long before Dave and I said, we still have some rough places too. Like last night, we had to work through a conflict and it wasn't any fun, but we're so glad we stuck with it. We just let them know right away that we're in the same boat. Maybe we've been practicing it longer, but we still have stuff. There's no shame in that. And so we give them, not kind of like you do, sprinkling in little personal details. We'll do a little bit of that, just enough so they know we are not talking down to them. We're learning right along with them. We're growing right along with them. And I would encourage people too, if you go for help and you do not care for the person that you meet with, maybe there's nothing wrong with them, but you just don't click, you don't feel safe, please try someone else. Ask around, find a friend who has been to someone that says, oh, I felt comfortable from the minute I sat down. Don't give up because it doesn't work right away.
And we think that a couple should go to the same minister. They should go to the
Mhm.
same source for counseling,
Yes.
and hopefully they don't take sides.
Yeah.
Right. You never take sides.
Yeah, that can be challenging for sure. And I think it's important um, that both parties do want to go to counseling versus one being like, no, because that makes it even more challenging as
Mhm.
well, depending on where one spouse is compared to the other one. So I want to lean into the intimacy concept of it and the sexual relationship. And I know that you guys talk about emotional needs a lot and being emotionally intimate. So can we lean into that?
Mhm. Sure. We find that I don't like to generalize, but we do find that in many couples, both spouses have different levels of interest in physical and emotional intimacy. And we also find that if one is saying, you don't meet my physical needs, it's very possible that person is not meeting their spouse's emotional needs. And if one spouse hears themselves saying, well, you don't meet my emotional needs, it's very possible they're not meeting their spouse's physical needs. So we acknowledge that we need both of those skills in order to have the best relationship. So did you have something you wanted to say?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, when we talk about sex, Dave is going to talk a little bit about the bedroom itself, the physical bedroom. He has some understandings that have really caused a lot of joy in our relationships, even to this day. The way he describes the bedroom and how we treat that area of our home has a lot to do with my peaceful sleep and, wonderful feelings toward him. I look forward to going to bed with him for a whole lot of reasons. So we find too, whenever we do a marriage weekend, I always talk about marriage begins at breakfast. And I'll just be very frank if I can, but if Dave starts breakfast by saying, Linda, I'm going to be gone all day today. Actually, I won't even get home till after dinner, and I'm going to miss you. I'm going to be thinking about you. Okay, I want sex. Like, when can we get together? That is just so appealing to me. It's just so sweet. It's so emotionally satisfying that it makes him very desirable to me. Breakfast is where sex begins. We can't treat each other carelessly all day long and think that when we go to bed, it's going to be magic. And not that we can only have sex at night, but everybody has their own routine.
Oh, I love morning sex. I'm always a fan. My husband and I, we have Freaky Fridays where it's
Oh,
like we know Friday morning. So like don't schedule any
awesome.
meetings. Don't plan on getting up
Awesome.
early to work out because we're going to be each other's workouts.
Mm.
And I love in the morning,
That's
and you're so
wonderful.
fresh and you're so loving. No one's pissed you
Right.
off or no one's like not showed up for work or anything else like that.
That's so good. I love that. And I love
Great.
what you said. For example, sex can be spontaneous. That's wonderful. But it's also good, especially if people are struggling to plan ahead. It's good to save the time. Don't go to bed when you're exhausted and think that you're going to have great sex. You might have quick sex and it might be fun, but it's not going to be meet all your needs. So I love what you said about sometimes planning ahead makes it's almost guaranteed success. You both agreed, you're looking forward to it. You've set the time aside.
And you're prepared as well. So I know, like, not to go all down this rabbit hole, but when you're prepared, and as a woman, being prepared may be like taking a shower the night before and shaving your legs versus
Mhm.
like going and not showering and not having shaved legs because the next morning you may say, oh, well, my legs aren't shaved or other body parts aren't shaved. And then you'll be saying no when your spouse is all set up to think this is a easy yes. So
Right.
having that time scheduled where you both can prepare and the other person isn't saying no when the other person is so excited for the yes. And, there's just, once again, it's a conflict.
Mhm.
And why, like, resolve the conflict before it actually happens. So,
That's so
Yeah.
true. I love that. Dave, why don't you talk a little bit about your thoughts about the bedroom?
Well, let me say this. we talk about emotional intimacy versus physical intimacy, um, if the wife comes in and the husband's watching television, the football game, and she says, "Oh, I had some horrible news. My best friend from high school just passed away." And the husband says, "Just a minute. This is really the most exciting part of the game. I just got to see this." Okay. So her emotional uh, buildup is really torn down. He throws water on it. Okay. And that feeling for her is the same one that he would have when they went to bed and he's all set up for a sexual encounter. And she says, "Oh, I'm really not feeling up to it tonight." You know,
Yeah.
so and so that same letdown is the one she experiences when he denies her feelings.
So there's a connection between communication and good sex.
That's true. So what we say about the bedroom is that's your sanctuary, that's your quiet place. So when you go to the bedroom, you don't go in and talk about finances. You don't talk about the kids, the problems you had today, uh, whatever, interrupted phone calls. No, that's conversation for the living room. When the bedroom door closes, that's your private time. And so you haven't agreed on we're gonna watch a little television and set the timer till it goes off. We're gonna read together and snuggle, or we're gonna have sex or whatever it is. And we agreed to do that. Okay. That's one thing.
I love
Just
that first and foremost, creating those boundaries and that safe space for that and having that conversation prior is so important. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that tip. I'm ready for the next one.
okay. Step number two is be young and humorous during sexual activity. Oh, crack a joke, whatever it is, but be light. He said, I heard a speaker one time said, if you want to keep your marriage young, be humorous during the sex, during intimacy, during foreplay. He
I
said,
can't repeat most of the jokes he tells me, but they are hysterical. They are fun. He is
My
fun.
husband has a sense of humor as well, and it tends to be sexual. And then sometimes I'll say it like in public, and my husband will be like, "No, that's for the bedroom only." And I'll be like, "Oh, that was like a secret joke. I didn't realize that," because he just
that's
has
good.
that sense of humor, which is tons of fun. And some people laugh about it, and some people, I mean, my book's name is called Stroke It. Of course, it's like some
Yeah.
people are like, "What?" I'm like, it just seems so normal, just because that's you just how our personalities are and our sense of humor. So. I
Yeah,
love enjoying the funness. And then I think when you said too, like being young and having fun, no matter what your age is.
that's
Yes.
right.
That's exactly
That's
right.
so true. Why stop?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have another tip for us, Dave?
Well, when we lie down, we always like to hold hands together. We snuggle and just hold hands till we fall asleep. We enjoyed that time.
I like that part. Now I find I am very jealous over that time. Like I can't even explain why. It is so important to me. I won't let anything interfere with it. It's just such a sweet way to end the day, and I'm addicted to it now. I look forward to just like you say, kind of leaving everything outside the bedroom that happened, no matter how hard the day was. We can take time to appreciate each other, to be thankful for our lives, and to just stir up hope and trust and realize we're in it together. So it's very, very important to me to have.
Yeah. I love that. So talk to me about how you're scheduling that time. How did you determine the best time to like make your way to the bedroom or the time frame? Because when I think about families, you've got one or two spouses working, you've got kids involved, you've got all these other variables. You may have a sick parent, you may have, someone that's moving in with you. There's so many variables that may maybe change the time of day that people want to go to sleep, or one spouse can't go before the other one. So, how did you come to like a really set time, or how do you schedule that?
One, well, the bottom line is we know about how much sleep we both need to feel well the next day. So we guard that. And then we add to that the time we're going to need before we go to sleep, depending on what we plan to do that evening when we go to bed. But when we were younger and we had kids, I think one of the most important things to remember is we're a team. After supper, it's not what do you need to do and what do you need to do, but it's what do we need to do so that we can go to bed together. So we would, I didn't mind doing something for Dave. He didn't mind at all helping me with what I was doing. So even though we each had our own plans and things we planned to do, the closer it got to bedtime, the more we started saying, how can I help? Is there anything I can do for you? And we would do our best to end up at the same time. And I know everyone's different. You may have to find your own solution, but if you can make that happen, it is really worthwhile. And just that attitude that we're a team, so that one person doesn't come to bed having bathed 4 kids and feeling absolutely exhausted. Um, we try to go to bed sort of in the same shape, having shared those responsibilities.
And as you're saying the shared responsibilities, I feel like that's something I want to dive into if we can, because I think in tradition, you have one person that goes and works and makes money, and then you have the other person that doesn't necessarily get paid for their job, but their job is equally as hard to take care of the house and take care of the kids. And I've seen this in a lot of married couples where this person, that's the house, they have to do everything for the house, and there's not so much buy-in from this person that's outgoing and making the money to provide for the household. What advice do you have for those families that maybe need to blend or maybe share kind of those responsibilities? I don't, so that is a really fine line, I know, but do you want to lean into that at all?
Well, I think it depends what the person believes versus what they think, what they believe. What
Can
they
give an
believe is
example.
going to direct what they do, direct their behavior. So if they believe I'm the one that does all the work around here, and I'm the one who puts in the greatest effort, and this house wouldn't survive without me, whatever. Um, or I'm overworked, I've taken care of the kids all day, and I need a rest. Whatever it is, that's not really a sound belief. That's not a family belief, and you have to change that thinking to I'm a part of the family and I have a responsibility to do these things. And so it's changing that thought and sharing that thought. I used to believe this, and will you forgive me for my selfishness?
Or my victim mentality, or not asking for help. I think it's good for couples to actually plan it out. Like when we clean, Dave cleans everything from the waist down and I clean waist up. So that works for us. We have simple agreements about what I'm responsible for, what he's responsible for. And I think as we get older, it's less important. We just kind of pitch in. If I see dishes and I'm in the mood, I'll do them. Or he might walk through the kitchen and do the dishes. We don't have such a division of labor. But when we had kids in the home, when we were even busier than we are now, we carefully discussed who would do what and counted on each other if we knew we were needing help, that we would speak up and ask for help. Asking for help is a great skill. And we always try to say yes when our partner needs help. Um, we don't get disappointed that they didn't do all their stuff, quote unquote. We're a team.
The most important dish in the evening is the coffee pot. So it's ready for the morning.
Yeah, that's
For
so
the
true.
next
I'm
morning.
so happy you all do that.
So I want to ask you, since we're talking a little bit about those household rules and, talking about creating those so that you can have that team mentality. Can you give us some example of maybe some household rules that would develop really good behavior and that would work for every single person, mom, dad, and children?
Yeah. Want to go with that?
Okay, so one of the things we try to look at is that household rules are for the purpose of developing people of character, whether it's the children or the adults. If household rules are about keeping our house spick and span and perfectly neat and accomplishing tasks, then we produce children who try to please us by doing more and more and more.
Competing.
That's not what we want, right? And they're competing who did the most and who did it the best. And instead, we like to produce character. So, for example, we were at my daughter's house one time, and our 6-year-old grandson we were all talking and he just all of a sudden got up and went out to the curb and got the trash can and brought it in. And instead of saying, "Good job, Luke, I'm proud of you for doing that," I said, "Wow, way to show initiative." And he said, "What's initiative?" And I said, "Well, that is being just inspired all by yourself to get up and go do something or go start something." And it was a year or so later he did something and I complimented his character. I don't remember what I said, but his aunt, I think he cleared the table of dishes. And what he said to me was, "Well, I like to show initiative." So all year he'd been thinking of that word. And so he didn't clear that table to make everybody say, "Boy, Luke, you're great." He did it because he felt good that he started that he showed initiative. And so any rule in the house, you should be able to point to a character quality that will develop. And like in adults, a lot of times the character quality we're looking for is teamwork, service, helpfulness, those kinds of qualities. And for children, they need to develop punctuality, responsibility, all those basic qualities.
So when
Yeah.
we complement the character, we develop maturity.
Mhm.
And when we complement the job, we develop competition and jealousy.
Performance, people pleasing.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down. I feel like this is such a great lesson, not to only use in marriage and in family and household, but in business.
Sure.
There's so many times we say, "Hey, great job," or, "I'm glad you filled up the sales sheet," or, "This was great." But I'm like, I'm loving the character aspect of it
Yeah.
because those characteristics are what make amazing humans.
That's so true. Like, I can always depend on you. Oh, I'm so grateful. You always follow through with what you promise. Those kind of
We work
compliments.
with this one family, and their first rule was to love well. They had to love their brothers and sisters and parents well. And so, that was a broad one. So they could really, okay, somebody talked back to one of the children, and there was a consequence because they did not love well. They were not kind.
Mm.
They had some very interesting rules, and so whenever you have rules, you have to have a consequence. Rules and consequences, especially for uh, children, and the rules apply to the whole family. So we all have to love well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't say,
Well, and I think too, when the parents are doing things as well with the children, that makes a big difference too. Yeah, there we are. Cool.
So, I thought one of the main rules that they had was there was an order, the rule of order. And when you think of order, you think of everything in its right place. But their rule of order also included consequence of if a child threw a block in the house, a wooden block.
Right, right. Oh,
Different perspective.
I can see why you guys are doing the work that you're doing. You're probably helping so many families. I just
well,
I just loved our conversation. So, well, as we wrap up today, I want to encourage our listeners to incorporate one thing because I feel like, yes, they can do all the things, and I want you both to answer this. What is one thing that you would encourage our listeners to do today to better themselves or their marriage or the way they communicate?
One choice is to say, let's have a fresh start. If you're in the middle of a disagreement or when in a meaningless, sometimes we have disagreements and they take tangential directions. They just go off in all directions, and we lose focus on the real reason we had a discussion.
we're having a conflict and neither one of us can remember what started the whole
Yeah.
thing. It's just we're tired, we're being irrational. There's a great secret to that situation.
So if one person says, let's have a fresh start, they've had an agreement ahead of time that if one person says that, we will agree. And the neat thing about that is there is power in agreement. When two people agree on one thing, it says, and the Bible says that when two agree on one thing, he shows up, the Lord shows up. Okay. And so that really strengthens our resolve.
So yeah, we find most times when we get into that kind of a situation where we have not focused on the main reason we're having a conflict, it's not a big issue. It's something small. We got irritated. We let our feelings take over. And when we have a fresh start, we realize we do not have to go back and figure out every single thing that went wrong. We can actually say, you know what? I forgive you. Will you forgive me? And can we have a fresh start? And like Dave said, once we agree on a fresh start, somehow the anger subsides. We feel loving toward each other, and we're both so relieved that we can go to sleep or we can get to that meeting on time or whatever it is. So we don't do it often, but once in a while, we just give each other a fresh start. It's great.
Oh, I
We were
love
walking
that.
we were walking across the parking lot one time on vacation, getting a cup of coffee at a restaurant, and this couple pulls up in a truck next to us.
It was our anniversary.
Yeah, and the woman rolls down the window, and she said, "You look like a happy married couple. What's your secret?" And I said, "Major on the majors, not the minors."
That's so true.
Yeah.
I think another quick truth is that sometimes we find ourselves focusing on wanting to change our spouse, and that almost becomes a focus. Oh, if he or she would just stop that, it'd be so much easier for me. But I want to turn that around in my mind to, if Dave knows I truly love and respect him, he will be interested in being influenced by my requests. If he feels disrespected, I could beg all I wanted, and I've never tried that with him, but I would imagine he would not be very receptive. So the more our spouse feels loved, accepted, and respected, the more influence we carry in their lives, and we're not even aware of it.
And the more I want to change her, I have to look at myself and say, what is it in me that's driving that?
Mhm.
What's that behavior? What's that thought?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like that is so true. There's so many times that we want to change other people, and some of the things that we want to change about them are things that we need to change about ourselves
That's it.
or
So
drive us
true.
crazy.
So true.
And I know I was in a relationship prior to meeting my husband, and I just wanted to change this man. I was like, I just want you to be this, this, and this. I love you, but I just want you to be. And my father was like, baby doll, why are you trying to change him? If you want to change him, he's not the right man. Go find someone you don't have to change and or appreciate who he is. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go find a new one.
Wise man. That's great.
Because who wants to live with someone that nothing is good enough? They don't like anything about them, or it was just constant. And that was no way to live. I mean, for him or for me either as well.
Right.
So well, I have so enjoyed our conversation. The both of you have to come to Sarasota. I have to meet you. You have to come to Sarasota now.
We will look
Um,
you up. We do come to Florida to see our son and our granddaughter and soon to be great granddaughter in Tampa and Orlando.
oh, okay. Well, when you're in Tampa, just come a little bit further south, or I'll come meet you up there and have some coffee and lunch. But before we do that, please tell all my listeners how they can connect with you. Tell us your website. Tell us where they can get help, get guidance, get support, and learn how to be amazing communicators and resolve conflict.
Okay, our website is Dave, dash Linda, Linda.com, Dave-Linda.com. We have books and seminars and training and ministry explained on those pages. We also have a contact opportunity there. And if you do try to contact us once in a while that doesn't get through to us, I'll give you our email, which is D as in David, C as in cat, and ROEDER @gmail.com. We would
Awesome.
love to hear from you.
Awesome. And all that will be in the show notes as well. And I want to just thank you for all your wisdom. And I want to congratulate you on 57 years of marriage. God bless you. I would love to say that my husband and I will be married for that long, but we got married in our 30s. So,
It could
so
happen.
we'll have to live for a very long time, but it's possible. We both have good genes in our family as well. And I want to thank ST for inviting us or introducing us as well. And thank you so much for being on the show. If you were listening today, definitely give us a 5-star review. This couple is absolutely amazing. And then I also want to encourage you to send this to 5 of your friends. And maybe you don't send it to your friend because you think they need it. Maybe they know someone that could benefit from listening to this podcast. And we want to thank you all for tuning in here today. And Linda and Dave, thank you so much. You both are so amazing.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
for
We
having
enjoyed our
us.
time.
We enjoyed meeting you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful vision. We love your heart.
Look forward to
Oh,
seeing you in Sarasota.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for tuning into the Stroke It podcast. I hope you were inspired. I hope you're willing and ready to take some action. I want to encourage you to consider 5 people that could benefit from today's podcast. Super simple to share this episode. You never know who could benefit from hearing this podcast and how you can inspire them to create the change in the life that they're wanting. Cheers, and thank you so much for tuning in. Also, consider giving a review.